side, Jason Garataz again. So I'm an attorney by trade. I practiced law for about 13 years. Started off as a trial lawyer, went into corporate law, general counsel for a few companies, focused on mergers and acquisitions for most of that time. But then I left to start up United Commerce Group, which you can see our portfolio at unitedcommercegroup.com. We've got 18 companies under management now. We do a lot of e-commerce, web ops for companies or investors that want to get into this sector. So we run paid media for them and those kinds of things. We have obviously our B2B on website closers, plus its sister company, Valley Biggs, which is a lower middle market focused tech and internet M&A firm as well. So kind of see it from all different sectors. We see it from the legal side, we see it from the operational side, and obviously the brokerage side as well.
My name is Ron Matheson. A little bit about my background is I used to be a bricks and mortar retailer. I owned a national chain of art and framing stores, which became art galleries. I had 22 stores in 7 states with about 200 employees. Got out of that in the early 2000s, played golf for a while, got bored, decided I needed to do something that maybe I was good at, and I made an offer to buy a business. It failed due diligence. 3 more, all failed due diligence, so I decided that if I was going to buy a business, I should probably see it from the inside as a broker. So I became a broker. I did purchase a couple of companies. One was an RV rental company and another was an advertising company. I liked the brokering side. I did about 80 to 100 deals in the bricks and mortar sector to begin with over the first couple of years. About 2010, I started to move towards digital. I knew that was the future. It was a lot more exciting and dynamic, so I stayed with it. Jason and I met not long after that. We formed Website Closers, which, as he mentioned, we are now the largest in the world. We're probably 15 times the size of our next largest competitor in this space. I think one of the reasons we've gotten to the stage where we are is that we have a great team, not only within our company, but also a great team of independents, meaning banks that lend within our sector, attorneys who understand our sector, due diligence experts, the whole works. So.
Very few, very few. Some people are thinking about it, but when you start thinking about things like your books, when you start thinking about, setting your company up with redundancy and doing all the things you need to do to properly transition a new person in, they haven't really thought through those things. So the idea of selling, yes, because that's how you build wealth, but actually preparing and doing all the steps necessary to actually get it out there. And as you'll see with us, we try to drive the value up as high as we possibly can. So you really need to be thinking about how do I do that? And if you don't start thinking beforehand, you're going to end up with a low multiple and not all that interesting. Versus if you start preparing, you do things the right way and start talking to the right people, you can blow it up.
How many people actually ever even have that thought?
Not very many. Yeah, that's pretty rare that someone would have that. And you got to think in our world anyway, we've got 800,000 people following us right now, buyers that want to buy these businesses. The demand is through the roof. And those buyers look like all different kinds of buyers, small family offices, private equity groups, hedge funds, wealthy individuals, roll-up companies, it goes on and on and on, all these people that want to buy these companies. But the question is a good one in that there's a big difference between an economical buyer and a strategic buyer. And if you don't think about that up front as you're preparing for exit, you can make some mistakes in maximizing your deal value. No matter who you choose, when it comes to your exit and planning an exit, you want to make sure you're focused on the highest multiple. Obviously, everyone in this room knows that. But then how do you get there? What's happening in the marketplace? How do you need to set up your company to make sure that you're focused on all the things necessary? At our firm, we pass on 80% of the deals that come to us. And the reason why is because we're only interested in the ones that we know we can get big numbers for. And so we're passing on a lot of stuff on a regular basis because it's, they're level, they're not, all that interesting. We want people that, you see a lot of opportunity for growth. They've created platforms, they've got real businesses and real brands that can actually go out and do well in the marketplace. And so we're actually changing all of our branding right now to be more like a warrior, a battler that goes out and actually fights for the biggest numbers possible. And so that's who you want. Whenever you're getting ready to exit, you want to make sure you're out there finding someone who's going to get the numbers up. And the reason we put this quote up there is just to be clear that yes, it's easy to sell a company for a 3, 4, even 5 times multiple, but what if you can get 8 to 10 times? What if you can get 15 times? We've sold companies at 35 times TTM before. And so that's possible. It is possible to go out there and have those kinds of just killer deals, but you've got to set your company up right. You got to know that you have the kind of company that people are going to look for to be able to convert that way.
So the first one is prepare early. You know, one of the things that I would say about a third of the groups that come to us, they're ready to go. They've done everything right. We look at their presentation, what they're doing, and there's not much we can coach them on, and we're ready to go to market. Most people are not. There's a lot of things they're leaving out. We can advise you on many, many, many different things in the process. So, you know, it's pretty important that you come to us in advance of a sale and let us kind of take a look at what you're doing and coach you on it. Now, you know, I cannot, if I were to say this over and over and over, it would not be enough. If you wait until your company is leveled off or going down, it's going to hurt you. You will get a lot less for your company. When your company is on the way up, people get excited. And as an example, let's say 3 companies are all making $1 million a year in profit. One made $1 million last year, but they made $2 million the year before. Everybody sees that company, they fear it, they do not want to touch it. If we sell it at all, we might get a 1.5 multiple, we might get a 2, 2.5, it's not going to be much. That's if we can sell it. Next guy comes to us, he's making $1 million. The previous year, he was making $1 million as well. Well, that's a steady company. We'll find a buyer for it, but it's got a defined value. You know, it's probably going to go for 3.5 times, and it's not going to be an exciting company. It'll be harder to find a buyer. And so, you know, we're going to get probably somewhere in that range for that value. Now, if you're going up, let's say you made, you know, $1 million last year, but you made $500,000 the year before. The multiple on that is going to go way up. It's going to go to 4, 5, maybe 6 times or more. Now, I'm throwing some multiples out and without really digging in, because there's a whole lot of things that go into these multiples, and the multiples can go well over 10 or 15 in some cases, but there's got to be reasons why. But as you can see, here's 3 companies making the same amount. One might sell for as little as $1.5 million. One may sell for $5 million or more. So when you're on your way up, that is the time to come to market. There's different sizes of companies. You know, if you're going to sell your company, say, if it's going for 10 million or more, they're probably going to require you to stay on for minimum 6 months, likely a year, and if you would commit to longer, they'd be thrilled. If it's smaller than that, especially under, say, 5 million, you're probably going to stay 3 to 6 months. Now, every buyer wants to know that you've given a lot of consideration to a transition, that you know exactly how you're going to make sure that it's a seamless process and they're going to hit the ground running and that they're going to do well afterwards. So you want to spend a lot of time on this particular point, because that's what draws a buyer from the point he makes an offer to wanting to close on that deal, and you get paid. Almost all these deals we do, and we do deals right up to publicly traded companies that buy these companies. Now, pretty much everybody uses some kind of debt of some form. As you get smaller, SBA dominates, but as you get bigger, there's, you know, sponsors, there's capital groups that are putting up the money. And so each step of the way, your numbers better be crystal clear. They better be easy to understand. If they're not, you want to go first to somebody like Vinny, who can take care of it and make sure that it is crystal clear, because it's imperative. Oh my God, I would say 40%, maybe 50. It's unbelievable how many. And a lot of them get a little bit intimidated because, you know, it's not that we intimidate them, but, you know, we let them know, you know, in no uncertain terms that we can't take their company under those conditions. And so, you know, it's a staggering amount.
If you're a growing company, a lot of options come into place where we can use discounted cash flow models and those kinds of things to model out the company over the next couple of years, and, you know, looking at selling it, you know, based on a projection. You can't do that, you know, if you haven't prepared properly, and you certainly can't do that if you don't have financials. And the financials have to make sense for the marketplace. So we're actually selling a Mastermind group right now. So we'll use that sort of as a case study here. We're selling the Mastermind for $2 million. They're throwing off $550,000 or so in discretionary earnings, so they're doing pretty good. Growing, most all of it is subscription revenue, but I'm just using them as an example here for this story. So when they came to us, they said, well, we assumed that this is going to be pretty difficult to sell because we do it. You know, we do the webinars, we're kind of at the top, we've got the experience. And we said, yes, that's true, but let's do this. Let's put some things into place to build redundancy and take you out of it. And so that's what you can be doing. You can find ways to take yourself out of that leadership role. And that goes for any company. And you should be thinking about that no matter what company you have, because no matter if it's professional services, if it's e-commerce, if it's a firm, it doesn't matter what, if it's a legal firm, no matter what it is, to the extent that the person at the top can pull themselves back and start focusing on growth and other opportunities, and also thinking about what the transition is going to look like. That can be a year ahead, 2 years ahead, and you really got to start thinking about that. So you need these key men, key women to put in place so that you've got people there. And so when you get to the point where you're starting to talk to buyers about your company, you can say, well, this person runs the company. This is the person on the face of the webinars, on the face of this, face of that, and start directing that attention to other people. You will very much so help yourself throughout that process and increase the value of your company.
Well, I guess that takes us back to number one, your question. Once again, if they had come to us 6 months before, it would have been easier for them in the transition because we could have advised them, put a face to your company now so that when we get ready to come to market, you're more prepared. So that's exactly what we're talking about in the first one.
The value of a company, which we're going to talk a little bit about more here, but the value of a company, and we talked about it just a second ago, but those that build teams and take the time to actually build human capital into their company always do better as platform acquisitions for people because you can bolt onto it. You have sort of economies of scale as it relates to those bolt-ons. There's a lot of buyers out there that are looking for those kinds of opportunities where you're not really focused on limiting overhead. It's more about building a team, even overbuilding a team a little bit so that you have, again, redundancy and you have a full team ready to go so that when you start these additional acquisitions, you're thinking like a buyer would think, okay, how am I going to scale this business? Well, M&A is a big way to scale a business in addition to all the other things you can do outside of M&A. So that redundancy is a really big key.
The last one is to be flexible. Now, in our presentation, there's some moments we'll be redundant and bring this up more than once, but this is one of them. Okay, when you're selling a company, the buyer is gauging your company, but he's also gauging you. He's going to need you through transition, and once again, depending on the size, that transition can be more than a year in some cases, or up to a year for sure. And so it's almost like a marriage, and by being flexible, you want to be able to go back and forth on some of these points, because if you don't, it's hard to get to the finish line on these deals. The national average for a company that goes under contract for actually closing is 50%. We're close to 85%, but one of the reasons we're there is because we have these conversations in advance. Okay, and it can be anywhere from the team and redundancy, once again, to have a face of the company in the case of the one we were talking about there, to, there's a whole lot of things you can do in the way of infrastructure to make somebody a little more comfortable. Now, keep in mind that not in all cases is there an infrastructure. For an example, we closed a deal for about $26.7 million to a publicly traded company. It was a husband and wife working in their basement with a couple VAs. And so, it does happen, but the more you can show depth, the more you're giving a comfort level to the prospective buyer.